Well, it turns out I was wrong. See, earlier this morning in Newswave, I talked about how I thought the Bayonetta 3 voice acting situation had come to an end. We were putting the bookend on it with Platinum Games releasing their statement, and I figured we were now going to roll into the reviews dropping and then the eventual launch of Bayonetta 3 at the end of this week. But wouldn't you know it, overnight, Helena Taylor decided to comment on this once again in a Twitter thread that did not at all help her case. And I figured we would take a look at it here a bit in depth because I've had it in Newswave here and there as we've gone along, but this is going to take a bit to go over. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. And if you're new to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Let's head over here to Twitter. This from Helena Taylor. Again, posting overnight. For me, it was like 1:30 in the morning. I believe her time zone, though, in Europe, probably like midday or earlier in the day anyway. So at least that regard, it makes sense. But after I saw this pop up, I went through it and I said, you know what, that's kind of sealed it for me in this case. And hey, if anything, Bayonetta 3, I believe, is going to actually benefit from all of this. But we can see this from Helena Taylor. It's come to my attention that some people are calling me a liar and gold digger. I feel the need to defend myself and my reputation in the industry. See thread. She says, as I posted on part 3 of my video thread, I explained that their first offer was too low. That offer was $10,000 total. So she did mention that there was an initial offer. And then they came back after that initial offer, after she said something to Camilla, and they said $4,000. She specifically said $4,000 for the entire game. Turns out it was $4,000 for a cameo, and now she's saying that it was $10,000 for that initial offer, and we'll find out a bit more about what the second offer was, which, spoiler, was not $4,000. She said, remember, this is a $450 million franchise, not counting merchandise. I then wrote in Japanese to Hideki Kamiya, asking for what I was worth. All right, so the $450 million, that being for the franchise, not including any kind of merchandise, basically nothing outside of boxed sales for Bayonetta. We have had this series released on multiple platforms. It's been on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and obviously most recently, Bayonetta 2 releasing specifically on the Wii U and then the Switch, and now Bayonetta 3 coming out on the Switch. People have been trying to figure out where that number is coming from because it's not an actual thing. Everything I've looked at, it's nowhere near that. But some people were kind of digging around and may have figured out where she's getting this from, and it's... I'll show you what I mean. So this is good old VG charts, which is an estimated amount on its own, but people started to notice something, as if you go to the Bayonetta series in total, you have many different listings here with numbers posted up next to each one, where we have like 3.09 million, 1.77, 1.32, 1.04, and then so on. And what we are looking at here is a listing of all of the different Bayonetta games along with the entirety of the series. If you add these numbers up and then multiply it by 60, people kind of notice that it comes right about to where she says at 450 million. Is she pulling her data from VG charts? It's possible. I mean, it's an estimate that we can use from time to time for different games just to get an idea as to where it is. I don't think I would use that in an argument when it comes to payment for voice acting and trying to pull numbers to show how valuable a series is. Because if you look at this, the only number you could probably use here is the top one, because that's the entirety of the series. You have Bayonetta, that's the series, Bayonetta. So all releases added together for that first game, and then all releases added together for Bayonetta 2. All right? So in totality, the series, according to VG charts, sold just over 3 million copies. And we know that there have been multiple times where the game has sold for less than $60 on Steam, when it debuted with, what was it, 20 or 30 bucks? And we know it's been on sale with those Steam sales for, I've seen $8 for the game before. On the 360 and the PS3, we know the prices would come down for that pretty quickly. So you can't even look at that and say it was $6 for every copy. In fact, being generous with the math, $150 million, I would say, at the most when it comes to its gross revenue. And I know Bayonetta fans don't necessarily like to hear this, but the Bayonetta series just isn't a big series. It's just not. But I will say, Bayonetta 3, especially now, has a chance, I think, to change that narrative. And I wouldn't be shocked at this point if Bayonetta 3 in its lifetime actually eclipsed the entirety of the series sales overall, covering 3.1 million, we'll say, because I have not seen people talk about Bayonetta this much ever before. Going on, though, now that we've kind of worked out that $450 million number, Helena Taylor does say, I thought that as a creative he would understand. He replied saying how much he valued my contribution to the game and how much the fans wanted me to voice the game. I was then offered an extra $5,000. She had an extra zero there. Typo. It's Twitter. Fine. So $15,000 is now the number we're at, whereas the first time with her video that did go viral, 10 million views on it, she said $4,000. So she's now nearly quadrupled the amount that they were offering her. And remember, the Bloomberg report mentioned the $4,000 as a cameo appearance, and she said that was their final offer, which, yeah, that was the final offer because they moved on pretty quickly, I would say, from her six-figure and residual ask since, I mean, at that point, they're going to test the market and see who else they can get, and they landed on Jennifer Hale. She says, so I declined to voice the game. I then heard nothing from them for 11 months. They then offered me a flat fee to voice some lines for $4,000. Any other lies, such as $4,000 for 5 sessions, are total fabrications. Well, I guess if you do the math and it's $4,000 per session and they come out to $15,000 flat rate for, say, maybe an extra session or something thrown in there, I guess technically then it wouldn't be $4,000 per session for 5 sessions. But nonetheless, you're going to have a hard time getting people on your side through sympathy when it's potentially, as people will work out the hourly wage, even though this would be considered like gig work for, say, an independent contractor, $800 to $1,000 an hour. There are a lot of people who would obviously like to be able to put in a week's worth of work and come out the other side with $15,000. So unfortunately, you're not really going to get that kind of sympathy that you may have been able to pass off before at $4,000 for the entire game, because remember, that was the original thing that she had said. She then says there were not extensive negotiations. I've also been informed of ridiculous fiction, such as I asked for $250,000. Well, I haven't seen that number thrown around at all. What I've seen is what was mentioned from the Bloomberg report, which, let's face it, Platinum Games, we can assume this, just happened to drop some paperwork and documents on Jason Schreier's doorstep, and that's probably how this information's gotten out there. And all we were told was a 6-figure amount, which means it could have been $100,000, $120,000, something like that. I haven't seen anyone say $250,000. Maybe she found a reply on Twitter somewhere and it said, wow, she's offered $250,000. That's all I can think of there. Says, I am a team player. I was just asking for a fair living wage in line with the value that I bring to this game. Not really sure what the fair value would be necessarily, or what she thinks it would be, because she never mentions it specifically. So it's kind of hard to what she would think in this case would be the correct ask for that amount, since technically the $15,000, as has been gone over at length by many people, is above the union wage that's been set as the minimum, which I believe is supposed to end up coming out to like $250 an hour or so. She goes on to say, I could not talk about the game because of NDAs, but I happily answered fans' letters, emails, signed posters, recorded voice messages for weddings and birthdays. I kept up interest in the game during the long periods of radio silence from Platinum. I don't think that's very relevant to this conversation unless you're trying to play up the idea of you going above and beyond to help out with the Bayonetta series, I guess. But then she goes on to say, the only time I was ever at a game conference, I felt weird asking fans for money for a signature, as they had already paid for the game, and I was grateful that they liked my work and the character, so I donated 100% of signing fees to charity. This is another odd one. So I'm sure many people who may be watching this have gone to a video game conference, an anime conference, a convention, whatever, and you'll notice that some of the big names will have a $10, $20, $30, $40 fee to sign, meet them, take pictures, whatever it is, right? And I mean, you go to a convention, you kind of feel like you're going to end up spending money on something, and it's not too surprising that a name that's well known and relatable to some of these characters that have voiced them would be asking some sort of fee. And there have been times I've gone and they're free, others they seem expensive, and I will say there have been a couple that I've gone to, like conventions, and I'll recognize the person who's voiced characters, and I'll look and it's like, wow, it's $40 to get a signature and photo from them. To me, I'm like, all right, that seems kind of high. But then you see the line and it's out the door. So I'm like, well, hey, they're testing the market, and the market says that their voice or their appearance there is worth it to get them to get that signature and that photo, and maybe even a recording from them, right, in character. So sure, she might feel bad about it, and she wants to, I guess, donate the money to charity. But you also have to realize, hey, you've built up this name, this character. I mean, it seems like she really was attached to the character, and you kind of have to take the independent contractor status as it is and seek business opportunities outside of it. And yeah, some of that has to do with you appearing at different conventions as the voice of Bayonetta, and okay, it costs $10 to get a signature and maybe a recording in character. But who knows, maybe that's more the objective business sense in me coming out. But we can see Helena Taylor here saying, I will post the 14 charities so you can donate to charity instead of buying the game from corrupt, greedy people. Wow, there are people who are attempting to throw shade and discredit what I say. The industry is powerful. They have powerful journalists too. And then she finishes up by saying they're trying to save their asset. Don't fall for it. Not a great idea. This tweet here is not good. Okay, sure, the 14 charities, but instead of buying this game from corrupt and greedy people, there are people who are attempting to throw shade and discredit what I say. So, rookie mistake. I'll say that when dealing with online, especially with Jason Schreier, who there have been times where he's been kind of called out by people who he's done stories on, and then he continues to dig and dig and dig, and he finds more and more information about people. So to me, if you challenge Jason Schreier, you better be prepared, because I feel like he's definitely seen this. He's tweeted about it. I feel like he may look into this a bit more, so we'll see if he comes up with anything necessarily, but she just said in a tweet that she is a team player, and then she goes on to essentially throw all the developers, the new voice actors, and all this under the bus immediately, and saying, don't buy the game, boycott it. And it has the opposite effect, because I'm noticing that Bayonetta continues to climb on the Amazon sales charts, especially with new releases, where it's right behind Madden at this point. I mean, it puts it in company of things like God of War and Pokemon. It's much higher than I was expecting for Bayonetta, a series that we just talked about. Overall has eclipsed 3 million copies sold, the entire series. So this is certainly a tweet thread that has completely burned bridges for her when it comes to the industry at large, because I don't know why you would then look to hire her as a voice actor for your game when this is what happens if she's not happy with negotiations, go back and forth that come out to about $15,000. And the obvious issue here is, now that more information's come out with apparently documentation to back it, her entire story appears to be changing like at the drop of a hat. So we go from 4,000 to, oh no, the first offer was 10,000, then it was 15,000. Then they came back with a cameo appearance for $4,000 that just tells me Hideki Kamiya really wanted her in the game in some way, to where he was willing to say, look, we have a Jennifer Hale, who will be voicing Bayonetta now, because we decided to seek other options in the marketplace, but we still want you in the game enough to pay you for a session so that you can read, as she says, some lines to add into the game. And this is where we are now. It's very hard to sympathize with Helena Taylor at all anymore, whereas before, with her initial video that did omit several facts, people were pretty much in her corner. For the most part, I'd say. A large majority were. Now, not so much. So I thought we were done with this entire situation when Platinum Games released their statement, but hey, overnight Helena Taylor shows up with a tweet thread that I would like to think will end this thing, but she also essentially called out Jason Schreier and then mentioned that a bunch of people are corrupt and that they are trying to save face by releasing information that appeared to be correct, because it was enough to change her story completely. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below, with the Bayonetta 3 controversy roaring on. But I guess the good thing is we're getting close to its release, and to me at this point, this game just needs to come out. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.